Some doors close so hard they echo for decades. This is the story of a daughter who was cast out, a family that chose pride over love, and a return that nobody saw coming. What happened when she knocked on that door 10 years later didn't just shock her parents. It shattered everything they thought they knew about their own hearts. Meet the Patterson family from Riverside, a quiet town in upstate New York where reputation matters more than truth and appearances count more than feelings. Thomas and Margaret Patterson were pillars of their community. Thomas owned the largest accounting firm in 3 counties. Margaret chaired every charity committee worth joining. They lived in the white colonial house on Maple Street, the one everyone admired. They had the perfect life, until their daughter decided to destroy it. Her name was Claire, 28 years old now. But this story really begins when she was 18. Back then, Claire Patterson was everything her parents had raised her to be. Valedictorian, piano prodigy, already accepted to Harvard with a full scholarship. The kind of daughter parents bragged about at country club dinners, the kind of success story that made neighbors jealous. But Claire had a secret. And when it came out, it didn't just disappoint her parents. It horrified them. It was graduation night. The Patterson house was filled with guests celebrating Claire's achievements. Crystal glasses, expensive wine, congratulations echoing off the walls. Margaret had planned this party for months, every detail perfect, every moment designed to showcase the daughter who had exceeded every expectation. Then Claire stood up in the middle of the living room and made an announcement that stopped every conversation cold. "I'm not going to Harvard. I'm leaving tomorrow for Los Angeles. I'm going to pursue music. Real music, not classical piano. I've already signed with a band. We're leaving on tour in 3 days." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. Thomas's face went from proud father to stone cold in seconds. The guests shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their shoes. But Claire wasn't finished. "And I'm going with Jackson. We're together. We've been together for 2 years. You just never bothered to notice because you were too busy planning my life for me." Jackson Miller, the mechanic's son from the wrong side of Riverside. The boy with tattoos and a motorcycle. The boy Margaret had explicitly forbidden Claire from associating with. The boy who represented everything the Pattersons were not. Thomas found his voice first. "Get out." Claire blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Thomas's voice was quiet but lethal. "Get out of my house. If you're going to throw away everything we've given you, everything we've sacrificed for you, for some delinquent and a fantasy that will fail within months, then you're not my daughter anymore." Margaret didn't speak, just stared at Claire like she was looking at a stranger. A disappointing, ungrateful stranger who had just humiliated her in front of everyone who mattered. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I'm still your daughter. I'm just choosing my own path. Can't you understand that?" "What I understand is that you've made your choice." Thomas turned his back on her. "And I've made mine. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. After that, this door is locked to you. Permanently." The guests started leaving, awkward goodbyes, pitying looks at Margaret, whispers that would become town gossip by morning. And Claire stood in the wreckage of what should have been her celebration, realizing her parents meant every word. She packed. Not much. A duffel bag of clothes, her guitar, some photographs. Jackson waited outside on his motorcycle, his face grim. He'd warned her this might happen. Claire had insisted her parents would come around, that they loved her too much to really cut her off. She was wrong. As she walked down the front steps for the last time, Margaret appeared in the doorway. For a moment, Claire thought her mother had changed her mind. Thought she'd say, "Wait, come back, we can talk about this." Instead, Margaret said 5 words that would haunt Claire for the next decade. "You were never really ours anyway." Claire froze. What does that mean? Margaret's face was cold, distant. "It means you've always been different, always wanted things we couldn't understand. Maybe this is just who you are. Someone who doesn't belong in this family, someone who never did." Then she closed the door, locked it, and turned off the porch light, leaving Claire standing in the darkness. Jackson drove them to Los Angeles that night. Claire cried for the first 200 miles. Then she stopped crying and started planning. She'd show them. She'd make it in music. She'd become so successful that they'd regret every harsh word. She'd prove that choosing her own path wasn't throwing her life away. But the music industry is cruel. The band broke up within 6 months. Artistic differences and ego clashes. Claire tried going solo, played dive bars and coffee shops, sent demos to every label in the city, got rejection after rejection. Jackson worked construction during the day and supported her dreams at night, but even his patience started wearing thin. 2 years in, Claire was waitressing to pay rent. 3 years in, she and Jackson split up, not because they didn't love each other, but because poverty and broken dreams are relationship poison. 4 years in, Claire stopped playing music altogether. The guitar sat in the corner of her studio apartment, gathering dust, a reminder of everything she'd lost. She never called her parents. They never called her. The silence between them grew so thick it became its own entity, a wall built from pride and hurt and stubborn refusal to bend. Claire heard things through old friends still in Riverside. Her parents had removed all her photos from the house, told people they had no children, moved on with their lives like she'd never existed. And somehow, that hurt worse than the initial rejection. They hadn't just cut her off, they'd erased her. But life has a way of forcing confrontations you're not ready for. 10 years after that graduation night, 10 years of silence and separation and carefully maintained distance, something happened that brought Claire back to Riverside, back to Maple Street, back to the white colonial house with the locked door. And what she discovered when she finally knocked on that door again, what waited for her on the other side, was so far from what she expected that it would reshape everything she thought she knew about her family, her past, and herself. Because sometimes the people who reject you the hardest are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. Sometimes the door that slams in your face is actually protecting you from a truth you're not ready to handle. And sometimes coming home after a decade means discovering that everything you ran away from was built on a lie. Claire Patterson had been the rebellious daughter, the disappointment, the one who chose wrong and paid the price. But she was about to learn that rebellion runs deeper than teenage defiance. That sometimes the real rebels are the ones who look perfect from the outside. And that the parents who cast her out had secrets that made her choices look like child's play. What would you do if you discovered that the family who rejected you for being different had been lying about who they really were all along? Would you forgive them? Would you walk away again? Or would you do what Claire was about to do and dig until you found the truth, no matter how much it cost? Because that's exactly what was about to happen. And the truth waiting in that house on Maple Street was going to change everything. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Claire was working her shift at a bookstore in Portland, Oregon, where she'd moved after Los Angeles chewed her up and spit her out. She'd rebuilt a quiet life, simple, safe, far from the dreams that had cost her everything. When her phone rang with a Riverside area code, her first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. But something made her answer. "Is this Claire Patterson?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional, careful. "Yes." "Who's asking?" "My name is Dr. Helen Reeves. I'm calling from Riverside General Hospital. Your mother, Margaret Patterson, has listed you as her emergency contact." Claire's world tilted. "That's impossible. My mother hasn't spoken to me in 10 years. She doesn't even acknowledge I exist. Nevertheless, you're the only name on file." Dr. Reeves paused. "Miss Patterson, your mother had a severe stroke 3 days ago. She's stable now, but the prognosis is uncertain. Your father has been with her constantly, But he's asked us to contact you. My father asked for me? Claire's voice was hollow. The same father who told her to get out and never come back? Yes. He was quite insistent. Said it was urgent that you come home. Said there are things you need to know before it's too late. Before what's too late? He didn't specify. But Ms. Patterson, I've been a doctor for 20 years, and I know that tone. Whatever your father needs to tell you, he believes time is running out. Claire stood in the middle of the bookstore, surrounded by stories that all seemed more believable than her own life suddenly. Is she going to die? I can't make promises about recovery from this type of stroke. Dr. Reeves was gentle. But I can tell you that if you have things left unsaid with your mother, now would be the time to say them. The drive from Portland to Riverside took 8 hours. 8 hours of Claire's mind racing through memories she'd spent a decade trying to forget. The look on her father's face when she announced she wasn't going to Harvard. Her mother's final words on the porch. You were never really ours anyway. What had that meant? She'd never understood it, never had the chance to ask. She arrived in Riverside after dark. The town looked exactly the same. Same streets, same shops, same judgmental energy that made her skin crawl. She drove past her old high school, past the diner where she'd had her first kiss with Jackson, past all the places that held ghosts of who she used to be. When she pulled up to the hospital, she sat in her car for 10 minutes, trying to calm her racing heart. What was she supposed to say to her father? To her mother? If she was even conscious? Hi, remember me, the daughter you erased? She had no script for this, no preparation. Inside, the fluorescent lights were too bright. Everything smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Claire gave her mother's name at the nurse's station and was directed to the ICU. 3rd floor. Room 312. With every step down that hallway, Claire felt like she was walking towards something she couldn't take back. The door to room 312 was partially open. Claire could hear the beep of monitors, see the edge of a hospital bed, but she couldn't see her mother yet. Couldn't see her father. Part of her wanted to turn around and run back to Portland, back to her quiet, safe life, where the past stayed buried. But she'd driven 8 hours, and Dr. Reeves had said time was running out. Claire pushed the door open. Her father sat in a chair beside the bed, holding her mother's hand. Thomas Patterson looked like he'd aged 20 years in the decade since Claire had seen him. His hair was completely gray. His face was gaunt. His expensive suit hung loose on a frame that had clearly lost significant weight. When he looked up and saw Claire standing in the doorway, something crossed his face that she couldn't quite read. Relief? Fear? Guilt? You came. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying, or screaming, or both. You asked me to. Claire stayed by the door, not ready to come closer. The doctor said it was urgent. Thomas nodded slowly. Then he looked at the woman in the bed. Claire forced herself to look too. Her mother was barely recognizable. Tubes and wires everywhere. Face slack on one side from the stroke. Eyes closed. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the formidable woman who had run every charity committee and social event with an iron fist. Claire felt an unexpected surge of compassion. Whatever anger she'd carried, whatever resentment, it was hard to hold on to when faced with this broken version of her mother. How bad is it? Claire asked. Thomas took a shaky breath. They don't know if she'll wake up. And if she does, they don't know how much brain function she'll have. The stroke affected her speech center, her memory, everything that made her her. I'm sorry. Claire meant it. Despite everything, she was sorry. Thomas stood up stiffly. We need to talk, not here. There's a waiting room down the hall. Will you come with me? Claire hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to say you had 10 years to talk to me, and chose silence. But the look on her father's face stopped her. He looked desperate, terrified, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Okay. They walked to the waiting room in silence. It was empty. Just chairs and old magazines and a coffee maker that had seen better days. Thomas sat down heavily. Claire remained standing, arms crossed, protective. "I need to tell you something." Thomas couldn't meet her eyes. "Something your mother and I should have told you a long time ago. Something we swore we'd never tell you. But now, with her like this, I can't keep it anymore." Claire's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "That night you left. When your mother said you were never really ours." Thomas's voice cracked. "She meant it literally, Claire. You're not our biological daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke. Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't process. Not biological daughter. What did that even mean? "You're adopted." Thomas finally looked at her. "We adopted you when you were 3 days old. Private adoption. We never told you because we wanted you to feel like you were truly ours. Like there was no difference between you and a child we might have had naturally." Claire sat down. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Adopted. She was adopted, and they'd never told her. Never given her the chance to know where she came from, who she came from. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because your mother was ashamed." Thomas's honesty was brutal. She couldn't have children. It destroyed her, made her feel like she'd failed as a woman. "When we adopted you, she made me promise we'd never tell anyone. Not our families, not our friends, and especially not you. She wanted everyone to believe you were ours biologically. So my whole life was a lie." "No." Thomas leaned forward. "We loved you. That was real. Everything we did, because we wanted the best for you." "The best for me?" Claire's voice rose. "You kicked me out, disowned me, told everyone you had no children. How is that love?" Thomas flinched. "Because you reminded us too much of her, of your birth mother." Claire went cold. "You know who my birth mother is?" "We met her once, at the adoption." Thomas's face was pained. "She was 18, barely older than you were when you left us. She was a musician, played guitar in dive bars, trying to make it in the industry. Got pregnant from a relationship that fell apart. Couldn't keep you. She signed the papers and we never saw her again." The pieces started falling into place. Claire felt sick. "So when I said I wanted to pursue music, when I chose that path, you saw her. My birth mother." "We panicked," Thomas admitted. "Your mother especially. She'd spent 18 years making you into everything she wanted you to be. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect future, and then suddenly you were choosing the exact same path as the woman who gave you up. It terrified her. She thought history was repeating, that you'd end up just like your birth mother, struggling, failing, giving up everything. So you cut me off to save me from becoming her? We cut you off because we were cowards." Thomas's voice broke. "Because we were scared and angry and we handled it in the worst possible way. We thought if we gave you an ultimatum, you'd choose us. Choose the life we'd planned, but you didn't. You chose yourself. And we couldn't handle it." Claire stood up, paced the small room. Her mind was reeling. Every memory from her childhood suddenly had a different context. Every time her mother had pushed her toward classical piano instead of letting her play the music she loved. Every time her father had redirected her interests toward practical careers. They hadn't been guiding her. They'd been trying to erase the parts of her that came from someone else. What was her name? Claire's voice was hard. My birth mother. What was her name? Thomas hesitated. Claire, I don't think... Tell me her name. Sarah. Sarah Chen. She was half Chinese, half Irish, played folk music, had this incredible voice that could make you cry. Sarah Chen. Claire had a name now, an identity beyond Patterson, an origin story that explained so much about who she was, why she'd never quite fit in her parents' perfect world, why music called to her like breathing. Is she still alive? I don't know. Thomas looked exhausted. We never kept in contact. The adoption was closed. We wanted a clean break. You wanted to erase her. Claire's anger was building. You wanted to pretend I came from you and only you, that there was no other story, no other possibility for who I could be. Thomas didn't deny it. And when you started becoming like her, when we saw glimpses of Sarah in you, it terrified us. So we tried to control you harder, push you further toward the life we wanted, until you pushed back, until you became exactly what we feared most, a musician. Like her, yes. Claire walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. Cars coming and going. People living their normal lives while hers imploded for the second time. So all these years, all this silence, it wasn't because I disappointed you by not going to Harvard. It was because I reminded you that I wasn't really yours, that I came from someone else, someone you considered beneath you. We were wrong. Thomas stood up. Claire, we were so wrong. About everything. About you. About Sarah. About what matters. Your mother realized it about 6 months ago. Started talking about finding you. About apologizing. About telling you the truth. But she was scared. Scared you'd hate her. Scared you'd never forgive us. And now she might never wake up to say any of it herself. Thomas nodded, tears streaming down his face. And I'm left here with all these secrets, all this guilt, and a daughter who has every right to walk out that door and never look back. Claire turned to face him. Why tell me now? Why not just let me think she had a stroke and leave it at that? Because you deserve the truth. Thomas's voice was raw. And because there's more. Things I found when I was going through your mother's papers. Things about Sarah, about your adoption. Things that suggest the story we were told might not have been the whole story. What do you mean? I mean your birth mother might not have willingly given you up. Thomas pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I found this hidden in your mother's desk. It's a letter from Sarah Chen, written 3 months after the adoption. And Claire, when you read it, you're going to understand why your mother never wanted you to know the truth. Claire took the letter with trembling hands. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, folded and refolded so many times the creases had become fragile. The handwriting was feminine, slightly messy, the kind of writing that comes from someone pouring their heart onto paper without stopping to think about neatness. She read, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, I know I signed papers saying I wouldn't contact you. I know I gave up my rights. But I need you to understand something. I need someone to know the truth, even if nothing can change now. I didn't want to give her up. They told me I had to. My parents, the social worker, everyone. They said I was too young, too poor, too unstable. They said she deserved better than a struggling musician who could barely feed herself. They wore me down until I believed them, until I signed. But the moment they took her from my arms, I knew I'd made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I've tried to find her, tried to get information, but the adoption was sealed. They won't tell me anything, won't even confirm if she's okay. So I'm writing to you, begging you to tell me something. Anything. Is she healthy? Is she happy? Does she smile? I think about her every single day. Wonder if she has my eyes or her father's dimples. Wonder if she likes music. If she'd like me? I'm getting my life together. I have a steady job now, an apartment. I'm still playing music on weekends. But during the week, I'm responsible. I'm proving I could have been a good mother if they'd just given me the chance. Please, just write back and tell me she's okay. Tell me you love her. Tell me I did the right thing even though it doesn't feel right. Tell me something so I can sleep at night without crying. Sarah. Claire read it twice, then a third time. Her birth mother hadn't wanted to give her up, had been pressured, manipulated, convinced she wasn't good enough, and then had tried to reach out, tried to know if her baby was okay, and the letter had been hidden away, never answered. She looked up at her father. "You never responded to this." Thomas's face was ashen. "I never saw it. Your mother must have intercepted it. I didn't even know it existed until 3 days ago when I was looking for insurance documents in her desk. 3 months after the adoption." Claire's voice shook. "She wrote this 3 months after giving me up, and Mom hid it. For almost 28 years, this letter has been sitting in a desk drawer while Sarah wondered if I was alive, if I was okay. Claire, I swear I didn't know. If I had seen this, I would have responded. Would have told her you were healthy and loved and... Would you?" Claire's anger flared. "Really? Because from what I'm hearing, you and Mom wanted a clean break, wanted to pretend I had no other mother. Would you really have given her peace of mind? Or would you have thrown this letter away like you threw away everything else that didn't fit your perfect narrative?" Thomas had no answer. The silence between them was suffocating. Claire folded the letter carefully and put it in her pocket. "I need to find her. Sarah, I need to know if she's still out there. If she still thinks about me. If she ever stopped looking. Claire, it's been almost 30 years." Thomas's voice was gentle. She might have moved on, might have a new family, might not want to be found. Or she might be exactly like me. Claire's voice broke. Spending every day wondering. Every birthday thinking about the daughter she lost. Every Mother's Day feeling like a failure. "I need to know, Dad. I need to know if the woman who gave me life spent 3 decades thinking I hate her for giving me away when the truth is she was forced to." Thomas pulled out his phone. "I'll help you. I have a private investigator on retainer for the firm. He can find people. We'll locate Sarah Chen, and then you can decide what you want to do." "Why are you helping me?" Claire studied her father. "After everything. Why now?" "Because I've lost 10 years with you already." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "Because your mother might never wake up and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing her last conscious thoughts were probably regret about how we treated you. Because I'm tired of secrets and lies and pretending. I want to do one thing right before it's too late." They went back to Margaret's room. Claire stood at the foot of the bed, looking at the woman who had raised her. The woman who had pushed her toward perfection. The woman who had hidden a desperate mother's letter because it threatened the fantasy she'd built. Claire felt a complicated mix of emotions: anger, pity, sadness, even love, twisted and damaged as it was. "Mom?" Claire spoke softly. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to know I found the letter. I know about Sarah. I know the truth. And I'm going to find her. I'm going to give her the peace you denied her for almost 30 years. And then, if you wake up, we're going to talk about all of this. About the lies, about the control, about the way you loved me, but only if I was who you wanted me to be." Margaret didn't move, didn't show any sign she'd heard. But the heart monitor kept beeping steadily, and Claire chose to believe that somewhere in her mother's damaged brain, the words registered. The private investigator, a man named Robert Chen, ironically no relation to Sarah, found her in 3 days. She was living in Seattle, still playing music. Still Sarah Chen, never married, no other children. She taught guitar lessons during the day and played at a small venue called The Bitter End on Friday nights. She was alive. And according to Robert's initial research, she was still very much the same woman who had written that letter almost 3 decades ago. A musician, a dreamer, a woman who had never quite recovered from losing her daughter. Claire held the address and phone number in her hand, staring at the information like it might disappear if she blinked. Her birth mother was in Seattle, just a few hours' drive from Portland, where Claire had been living all this time. They'd been in the same region for years, maybe passing each other on the street without knowing. The universe's cruel sense of irony. Thomas stood beside her. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to meet her." Claire's voice was firm. "I'm going to drive to Seattle and walk into that bar and tell her I'm the daughter she's been thinking about for 28 years. I'm going to give her what my mother never did. Closure, truth, a chance to know I'm okay. And what about your mother? Thomas gestured toward the hospital room. What about us? Claire looked at her father, really looked at him, saw the guilt written in every line of his face, the regret, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, he could undo some of the damage. I don't know yet. I don't know if I can forgive you and Mom for the lies, for hiding that letter, for cutting me off, for making me feel like I was never good enough. But I know I need to meet Sarah before I can make any decisions about us. Fair enough. Thomas reached into his wallet and pulled out a credit card. Take this. For gas, for a hotel, for whatever you need. And Claire, when you meet her, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her we should have responded to that letter. That she deserved to know her daughter was loved and safe. Tell her I failed her almost as badly as I failed you. Claire took the card. One more thing. When did Mom start wanting to find me? You said 6 months ago she started talking about it. What changed? Thomas's expression became even more pained. She was diagnosed with early onset dementia. 6 months ago. The doctor said she had maybe 2 years before it got really bad. Before she started forgetting things. Forgetting people. She was terrified she'd forget you entirely. That she'd die without ever fixing what she broke. That's when she started talking about finding you. About confessing. But she kept putting it off. Scared of your reaction. And now she might never get the chance. Claire felt a twist of something in her chest. Not quite forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of understanding. Her mother had been driven by fear. Fear of inadequacy. Fear of losing control. Fear of being forgotten. And that fear had poisoned everything. I need to go. Claire moved toward the door. I need to meet Sarah before I lose my nerve. Will you come back? Thomas's voice was small. After you meet her, will you come back here? Claire paused. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if I'll want to. But I'll call. I'll let you know what happens. That's the best I can promise right now. That's more than I deserve. Claire drove through the night toward Seattle. She'd called the venue, found out Sarah's set started at 9 p.m. on Fridays. It was Thursday night. She'd have time to find a hotel, sleep, prepare. But sleep didn't come. She lay in a generic hotel room, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what she'd say. Hi, I'm your daughter. Remember me? The baby they took from you? Except she didn't remember. Couldn't. She'd been 3 days old. What if Sarah didn't want to know her? What if seeing Claire brought back too much pain? What if 28 years had created a scar that didn't need to be reopened? These thoughts circled Claire's mind like vultures. But she'd come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Friday evening, Claire stood outside the bitter end. It was a small place. Worn wood exterior. Neon sign that flickered. The kind of dive bar where real musicians played for people who actually listened instead of just drinking and talking. Claire could hear guitar music from inside. Folk. Melancholic. Beautiful. She pushed open the door. The bar was dimly lit. Maybe 40 people scattered at tables and the bar. A small stage at the back. And on that stage, under a single spotlight, sat a woman with long, dark hair streaked with gray, holding a guitar, singing into a microphone. Her voice was exactly what Thomas had described. Incredible. The kind of voice that made you stop and listen, made you feel things you didn't want to feel. Claire found a table in the back, ordered a drink she didn't plan to finish, and watched her birth mother perform. Watched the way Sarah's fingers moved on the guitar strings, the way she closed her eyes when she hit certain notes, the way she poured everything she was into every song. Claire saw herself in those movements, recognized the passion she'd always felt for music, the need to express something words alone couldn't capture. The set ended. People applauded. Sarah smiled, thanked them, started packing her guitar. Claire's heart hammered. This was it. The moment she'd have to stand up, walk over, say something that would change both their lives forever. But before she could move, someone else approached Sarah. A woman, older, maybe in her 60s. She said something to Sarah. Sarah's face lit up. They hugged, started talking animatedly. Friends, clearly, old friends based on their comfortable body language. Claire waited, watched, tried to find courage that seemed to have abandoned her completely. Then she heard it. The older woman's voice carried across the quiet bar. "So have you heard anything? About your daughter? Any leads from that search service?" Sarah's face fell. The light went out of her eyes. "No, nothing. It's been almost 30 years. I have to accept that she probably doesn't want to be found. That maybe her adoptive parents told her I abandoned her. That she hates me. You don't know that. The friend was supportive. You gave her up to give her a better life. She'd understand that." "Would she?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Because I don't understand it. I was pressured into the worst decision of my life, and I've paid for it every single day since. Every birthday, I wonder where she is. If she's happy. If she ever thinks about me. If she knows I think about her constantly." The friend hugged her again. "You're a good person, Sarah. Whatever happened, wherever she is, I'm sure she turned out wonderful. She has your genes, your heart. That counts for something." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I wrote a letter once to her adoptive parents, begging them to just tell me she was okay. They never responded. I like to think they never got it, that it got lost in the mail. Because the alternative, that they read it and chose to ignore it, that they denied me even the smallest peace of mind, that's too cruel to imagine." Claire stood up. Her legs were shaking, but she walked forward anyway. Walked straight to the stage where Sarah and her friend were talking. Both women looked up as she approached. "Hi." Claire's voice was steadier than she felt. "Are you Sarah Chen?" Sarah's brow furrowed. "Yes." "Do I know you?" "No." Claire took a breath. "But you knew me once. 28 years ago. You held me for a few minutes before they made you sign papers. Before they took me away. Before you wrote a letter that never got answered." Sarah went pale. Her friend gasped. Everyone in the bar seemed to fade away until it was just the two of them. Mother and daughter. Separated by decades and lies and circumstances neither had controlled. "My name is Claire." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "And I got your letter. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I smile. And I've thought about you every single day since I found out you existed." Sarah's guitar case fell from her hands and clattered to the floor. "My baby. Oh my God. My baby." And then they were hugging, both crying, both holding on like they'd never let go again. 28 years of wondering. 28 years of grief. 28 years of missing someone you'd never known but always loved. All of it poured out in that embrace. The bar erupted in applause. Strangers wiping tears from their eyes. Sarah's friend sobbing openly. But Claire and Sarah didn't hear any of it. They were too busy holding each other. Too busy making up for lost time. Too busy starting a relationship that should have begun almost 3 decades ago. They sat in a corner booth at an all-night diner 3 blocks from the bitter end. Sarah couldn't stop touching Claire's hand, like she needed constant confirmation that this was real, that her daughter was actually sitting across from her. Claire understood. She kept staring at Sarah's face, seeing her own features reflected back, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile. All the things that had never quite matched the Patterson family photos suddenly made sense. "Tell me everything." Sarah's voice was urgent. "Where did you grow up? What your childhood like? Did they treat you well? Were you happy?" Claire didn't know where to start. The question was too big, too loaded. So she began with the simple facts. Riverside. Upper middle-class family. Good schools, piano lessons. Everything that looked perfect from the outside. Sarah listened intently, nodding, asking questions. But Claire could see the pain in her eyes when she mentioned Thomas and Margaret, the people who had taken her place. "And they never told you about me?" Sarah asked. "Not once?" "Not until 3 days ago." Claire pulled out the letter. "My mother had a stroke. When my father was going through her papers, he found this. That's how I learned I was adopted. That's how I learned about you." Sarah took the letter with shaking hands, seeing her own handwriting from almost 3 decades ago. "I wrote this when you were 3 months old. I was living in a terrible apartment, working 2 jobs, still trying to convince myself I'd done the right thing, that you were better off without me. But at night, I'd wake up reaching for you, expecting to hear you cry. And you weren't there. You were never going to be there again." Claire felt tears streaming down her face. "They told me you gave me up willingly, that you couldn't handle being a mother, that you chose music over me." Sarah's face twisted with anger. "No, God, no. I was 18 years old and everyone in my life told me I was too young, too poor, too irresponsible. My parents threatened to disown me if I kept you. The social worker said I was being selfish for even considering raising you in my circumstances. They wore me down until I believed I was doing the right thing. But the moment I signed those papers, I knew. I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Why didn't you fight it? Why didn't you take it back?" Sarah's voice broke. "I tried. I called the agency. They said it was too late. The adoption was finalized. You already had a new family. They said it would be traumatic to disrupt your life. That I needed to accept my decision and move on. But how do you move on from giving away a piece of your heart?" Claire reached across the table and took both of Sarah's hands. "You didn't give me away. They took me from you. There's a difference." They sat in silence for a moment. The diner was nearly empty. A waitress refilled their coffee. Life continued around them while their world was being rebuilt from scratch. Sarah finally spoke again. "What made you want to find me? After all this time, what changed?" Claire told her about the past 10 years, about choosing music over Harvard, about her parents disowning her, about Los Angeles and failure, and finally rebuilding a quiet life in Portland. Sarah listened with an expression that cycled through heartbreak, pride, anger, and understanding. "You became a musician anyway." Sarah's smile was sad. "Even without knowing me, even being raised by people who wanted you to be something else entirely, you still followed the same path I did. I think it's in my blood." Claire looked at her birth mother. The music, the need to create, the feeling that a conventional life would suffocate me. My parents, the Pattersons, they never understood that. They thought I was being rebellious, but I was just being myself. And they punished you for it. Sarah's voice was hard. Just like my parents punished me. Just like the system punished me for being young and poor. It's the same cycle. People who don't understand creativity trying to control those who do. Claire felt something shift inside her. A piece of the puzzle clicking into place. I spent 10 years thinking I'd disappointed them. That I'd failed. That I was the problem. But maybe the problem was that they were trying to make me into someone I was never meant to be. You were meant to be exactly who you are. Sarah squeezed her hands. And I'm so sorry I wasn't there to tell you that every day of your life. They talked until sunrise. Sarah told stories about Claire's biological father, a musician named David Wu who had died in a car accident when Sarah was 7 months pregnant. Told her about the pregnancy, about labor, about those precious 3 days in the hospital before the adoption became official. Told her everything she'd stored up for 28 years with no one to share it with. Claire told Sarah about her childhood, the good parts and the painful parts, the pressure, the perfectionism, the moment she realized she had to choose between her parents' dreams and her own. Sarah listened and cried, and apologized repeatedly for not being there to protect her daughter from that pain. As dawn broke through the diner windows, Sarah asked the question Claire had been dreading. What happens now? Between us? Claire took a breath. I want to know you. I want to build a relationship. But I also need time. This is a lot to process. Finding out I'm adopted, meeting you, understanding that everything I thought about my origins was a lie. I need space to figure out what it all means. Sarah nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. I understand. I've waited 28 years. I can wait a little longer. Just promise me you won't disappear. Promise me I get to be part of your life in some way. I promise. Claire meant it. You're my mother. Maybe not the one who raised me, but the one who gave me life. The one who wanted me even when everyone told you not to. That matters. You matter. They exchanged phone numbers. Sarah made Claire promise to text her when she got back to Portland safely. Claire promised. They hugged in the parking lot, neither wanting to let go. When they finally separated, both were crying again. I have something for you. Sarah went to her car and came back with a worn guitar case. This was supposed to be yours. I bought it right after you were born. Told myself that someday I'd find you and give it to you. That we'd play music together. I've kept it all these years, waiting. Claire opened the case. Inside was a beautiful acoustic guitar. The wood was dark, well maintained. On the inside of the sound hole, Sarah had written something in permanent marker. For Claire, my daughter, my heart, my song. May you always play the music in your soul. Claire couldn't speak, just held the guitar and cried. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter and cried too. 28 years of grief and hope and love poured out in that parking lot as the sun rose over Seattle. Claire drove back to Riverside with the guitar in her passenger seat. She didn't go straight to the hospital. Instead, she checked into a hotel and slept for 12 hours, emotionally exhausted. When she finally woke, she had 17 missed calls from her father and dozens of texts. The most recent one made her heart stop. Your mother woke up. Please come to the hospital. She's asking for you. Claire arrived at the hospital within 20 minutes. Thomas met her in the hallway outside Margaret's room. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His relief at seeing Claire was palpable. She's awake but confused. The stroke affected her memory. She doesn't remember the past few years clearly. But Claire, she keeps asking for you. Keeps saying your name. The doctors say it's a good sign. That her long-term memory might be intact even if her recent memory is damaged. Does she remember disowning me? Thomas's face fell. I don't know. She's been in and out of consciousness. Mostly she just keeps repeating your name and crying. Claire steeled herself and walked into the room. Margaret was propped up in bed, looking smaller and more fragile than ever. When she saw Claire, her face crumpled, and she started crying harder. Baby, my baby, I'm so sorry. Margaret's words were slurred from the stroke, but understandable. So sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Claire approached the bed slowly. Mom, do you know what you're apologizing for? Margaret's eyes were confused but earnest. I don't remember everything, but I know I hurt you. No, I pushed you away. The doctors told me it's been years since you were home. Years. How could I do that to my own daughter? Thomas stepped forward. Margaret, there's something you need to know. Claire found the letter. From Sarah Chen. She knows about the adoption. She's met her birth mother. Margaret's face went pale. No, you weren't supposed to. I was going to tell you. I was going to make it right. I just needed more time. You've had 28 years. Claire's voice was harder than she intended. You could have told me when I was 5, or 10, or 15. You could have responded to Sarah's letter and given her peace. You could have done 1,000 things differently. But you chose secrets and control instead. I was scared. Margaret reached out a weak hand toward Claire. Scared of losing you. Scared you'd choose her over me. Scared you'd hate me for not being your real mother. You were my real mother. Claire's voice broke. You raised me. You were there for every scraped knee and school play and Christmas morning. That made you real. But you know what else would have made you real? Trusting me with the truth. Letting me know both sides of my story. Instead, you tried to erase half of who I am. And when I became too much like the woman you were trying to hide, you threw me away. Margaret sobbed. I know. And I'm so sorry. I've been sorry for 10 years. I wanted to find you, to apologize, but I was too proud, too ashamed, and now I might not have much time left, and all I want is a chance to fix what I broke. The dementia? Claire looked at her father. She remembers that diagnosis. Thomas shook his head. She doesn't. The stroke wiped out most of her memory from the past year. But the doctors confirmed it's still progressing. She has maybe a year of good cognitive function left. After that, she'll start forgetting things. People. Eventually, everything. Claire looked at her mother. At this broken woman who had loved her imperfectly, who had made terrible choices from a place of fear, who was running out of time to make amends, and Claire realized something that changed everything. Forgiveness wasn't about whether Margaret deserved it. It was about whether Claire could live with carrying this anger for the rest of her life. Could live with knowing her mother forgot her entirely, while they were still estranged. Could live with that kind of regret. Mom. Claire took Margaret's hand. I met Sarah. She's wonderful. She's everything you were afraid she'd be. Creative and passionate and struggling but happy. And you know what? She doesn't want to replace you. She just wants to know I'm okay. That's all she's ever wanted. Margaret's tears flowed harder. Is she angry with me for hiding the letter? She doesn't know about it yet, Claire admitted. I haven't told her you had it all these years. Haven't told her you could have given her peace and chose not to. But I'm going to have to eventually. Because secrets are what destroyed this family. And I won't build a new relationship with Sarah on more lies. Tell her. Margaret's voice was firm despite her weakness. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I was selfish and scared, and I denied her something precious because of my own insecurities. And tell her that despite everything, despite my terrible choices, I loved her daughter. I loved you so much it made me crazy, made me controlling, made me push you away when you didn't fit the mold I'd created. But it was always love, twisted and damaged, but love. Claire sat on the edge of the bed. I know, Mom. I know you loved me. That's what makes this all so hard. Because you loved me, but you hurt me. And I have to figure out how to hold both those truths at the same time. Margaret squeezed her hand weakly. Are you going to leave again? After this, are you going to walk away for good? Claire looked at her father, then back at her mother. I don't know yet. I need time. Need to process everything. Need to figure out how to have both you and Sarah in my life without it tearing me apart. But I'm not disappearing. Not this time. You'll know where I am. And when you start forgetting things, when the dementia gets bad, I'll be there. I won't let you face that alone. Even after everything I did, even after everything. Because you're still my mother, and I'm still your daughter. And maybe that's enough to start rebuilding from. Claire stayed in Riverside for 3 weeks. Long enough to see her mother stabilize. Long enough to have difficult conversations with both parents. Long enough to start understanding that the story she'd been telling herself for 10 years was only partially true. But it was Sarah's phone call that changed everything. Claire, I need to tell you something. Sarah's voice on the phone was shaking. I've been going through old boxes, things I packed away after the adoption because they hurt too much to look at. And I found something. Documents. Papers from the adoption agency. And they don't match what I was told. What do you mean? There was a pause. Can you come back to Seattle? I need to show you in person. This isn't something I can explain over the phone. 2 days later, Claire sat in Sarah's small apartment, surrounded by boxes and papers spread across the coffee table. Sarah looked like she'd been crying for days. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hands trembled as she sorted through documents. When I gave you up, They told me it was a private adoption. That a wealthy couple who couldn't have children wanted to give you everything I couldn't. They said it was already arranged, that the Pattersons had been waiting for a baby and you were the perfect match. They made it sound like fate. Claire felt her stomach drop. That's not what happened? Sarah shook her head. Look at this. She pushed a document across the table. This is the initial application the Pattersons filed with the adoption agency. It's dated 6 months before you were born. They weren't just waiting for any baby. They were specifically waiting for you. Claire looked at the paper, saw her parents' names, saw a detailed description. Female infant, mixed Asian and Caucasian descent preferred. Mother must be young, healthy, with artistic inclinations. No family history of mental illness or addiction. The specifications went on for pages. They custom ordered me? Claire's voice was hollow. It gets worse. Sarah pulled out another document. This is a payment record. Your parents paid the agency $50,000. But that wasn't for the adoption process. That was months before you were even born, before I'd agreed to anything. What are you saying? I'm saying they found me when I was 4 months pregnant. Found me specifically. The agency approached me with an offer. $20,000 to give up my baby to a couple who would give her the life I never could. I was broke, Claire. My parents had kicked me out. I was living in my car. $20,000 felt like a miracle. Sarah's voice cracked. But now I'm looking at these papers and I'm seeing that your parents paid $50,000, which means the agency took $30,000 as their fee for finding a pregnant teenager desperate enough to sign over her baby. Claire felt sick. They bought me. Like I was a product they ordered from a catalog. I think it's worse than that. Sarah pulled out the final document. This is a contract I didn't know existed until I found it in these boxes. It's between the adoption agency and the Pattersons, and there's a clause here. She pointed to a paragraph of legal text. It says that if the birth mother attempts to contact the adoptive family within the first 5 years, the agency will intervene and prevent any communication. It also says the adoptive family has the right to relocate without notifying the birth mother of their new location. My letter, Claire whispered. The one you sent 3 months after the adoption. It wasn't that Mom hid it from Dad. It was that the agency intercepted it before it ever reached them. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I wrote 7 letters, Claire. 7. Over the course of 2 years. I thought your parents were cruel people who didn't care that I was suffering. But now I think they never saw any of them. The agency was blocking all contact to protect their investment. But the letter Dad found. The one in Mom's desk? How did that one get through? Sarah checked the dates. That one was written 3 years after the adoption. After the 5-year clause expired. By then the agency wasn't monitoring anymore. So that letter made it to your house, and your mother chose to hide it. Claire stood up and walked to the window. Her entire understanding of her adoption was unraveling. She thought Sarah had willingly given her up. Then she'd learned Sarah was pressured. Now she was learning the whole thing was orchestrated by an agency that treated babies like commodities and desperate mothers like inventory. There's more. Sarah's voice was barely audible. I talked to a lawyer, told him what I found. He did some research on the agency. Claire, it was shut down 15 years ago. Investigation for illegal adoption practices. They were targeting young, poor mothers, offering them money while charging adoptive parents triple, sometimes quadruple. They made millions before they got caught. Were there other mothers like you? Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The lawyer said there's a support group now. Women who were exploited by this agency, who were lied to about their rights, who were told their babies would have better lives, when really their babies were just being sold to the highest bidder. Claire felt rage building in her chest. Did my parents know? Did they know the agency was corrupt? Did they know you were being exploited? I don't know. Sarah looked exhausted. Part of me wants to believe they were victims too. That they just wanted a baby and didn't ask enough questions about where it came from. But another part of me wonders how they could pay $50,000 and not question what was happening behind the scenes. Claire pulled out her phone. I need to talk to my father. Right now. The drive back to Riverside was a blur. Claire called Thomas from the road, told him to meet her at the house, not the hospital. When she arrived, he was waiting on the front porch, looking worried. What's wrong? What happened? Claire threw the adoption documents on the porch table. You want to know what happened? This is what happened. You and Mom bought me from an agency that exploited my birth mother, an agency that intercepted her letters, an agency that was eventually shut down for illegal practices. That's what happened. Thomas's face went white as he picked up the papers. Where did you get these? Sarah kept copies of everything. Unlike you and Mom, she wanted documentation of the biggest mistake of her life. Claire's voice was sharp. Did you know? When you paid that agency $50,000, did you know they were only giving Sarah $20,000? Did you know they were keeping $30,000 as profit for finding you a designer baby? No. Thomas sank into a porch chair. God, no. We were told the $50,000 covered legal fees, medical expenses, counseling for the birth mother. We never questioned it. We just wanted a baby so badly. We'd been trying for years. The agency said they could help us. We trusted them. You trusted them more than you trusted Sarah. Claire's anger was boiling over. You never tried to contact her. Never tried to send her updates or photos. Never considered that maybe she deserved to know how I was doing. The agency told us clean breaks were healthier, that birth mothers moved on faster if there was no contact. We believed them because we wanted to believe them, because it was easier than dealing with the complicated reality of another woman having a claim to our daughter. She wasn't another woman. She was my mother. Claire's voice broke. And you erased her. You paid an agency to find you a baby that matched your specifications, and then you erased the woman who gave birth to me. And when I started showing traits that came from her, when I started being interested in music instead of accounting or law, you tried to erase those parts too. Thomas's face crumpled. You're right. About all of it. Your mother and I were so desperate for a perfect life, for a perfect daughter, that we ignored all the uncomfortable truths. We told ourselves we were rescuing you from a hard life, but really we were just buying the family we couldn't create naturally. And when that family didn't look the way you wanted, you threw it away. Claire sat down, suddenly exhausted. You threw me away like I was defective merchandise. I'm so sorry. Thomas reached for her hand, but Claire pulled away. I can't undo what we did. Can't undo the agency's corruption or our willful blindness or the 10 years we lost. But I need you to know something. Despite everything, despite all the terrible choices we made, we loved you. You were never defective. You were perfect. We were the ones who were broken. Claire looked at her father. This man who had seemed so powerful when she was growing up. So in control, so sure of himself. Now he just looked old and sad and lost. I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to call Sarah. Apologize to her directly. Tell her you're sorry for what the agency did. Sorry for never reaching out. Sorry for hiding that one letter that did make it through. She deserves to hear it from you. I will. I'll call her today. And I need you to help her. Claire pulled out information the lawyer had given Sarah. There's a lawsuit against the people who ran that agency. A class action from all the mothers who were exploited. Sarah's joining it. And I want you to use your resources, your connections, your money, to help make sure those people pay for what they did. Consider it done. Thomas looked at the information. I'll call my lawyers immediately. We'll do whatever it takes. One more thing. Claire stood up. I'm bringing Sarah to meet Mom. And you're going to sit there and listen while Mom apologizes to her face, while she admits what she did, while she takes responsibility for hiding that letter. No more secrets, no more lies. Everything out in the open. Your mother's memory is fragile right now. The stroke and the dementia. I don't know if she can handle. She's going to have to handle it, because I'm done protecting people from uncomfortable truths. That's what destroyed this family in the first place. Everyone protecting everyone else from reality until reality became impossible to ignore. Thomas nodded slowly. When? This weekend. I'll bring Sarah on Saturday. You make sure Mom is ready. The meeting happened in the Patterson living room. Margaret was home from the hospital, still weak but insistent on being out of bed for this. Sarah arrived with Claire, nervous and clearly uncomfortable. This was the woman who had raised her daughter. The woman who had kept her letter hidden. The woman who had lived the life Sarah had dreamed of. Margaret looked at Sarah and started crying immediately. I'm so sorry. I don't remember everything clearly, but Thomas told me what I did. The letter. How I hid it. How I denied you peace for 25 years. I was selfish and scared and cruel. Sarah sat down stiffly. You have no idea what those years were like. Every birthday. Every Mother's Day. Every time I saw a little girl who looked like she might be mine. I tortured myself wondering if Claire hated me, if she was happy, if she even knew I existed. She knows now. Margaret's voice was weak, and she's wonderful. More wonderful than I deserved. I tried to make her into something she wasn't. Tried to erase the parts of her that came from you, and I lost her because of it. Sarah looked at Claire, then back at Margaret. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not here to claim her back. I'm here because Claire asked me to come. Because she thinks we all need to face each other and deal with what happened. Margaret nodded. What do you want from me? What can I possibly give you that would make any of this better? Sarah thought for a long moment. I want you to tell me about her. About Claire's childhood. The things I missed. The first words. The first steps. The moments that made you proud. I want the memories I should have had. And so Margaret talked. For 3 hours, she shared stories. Claire's first piano recital. Her first day of school. The time she broke her arm falling out of a tree. Christmas mornings and summer vacations and ordinary Tuesdays that had made up a childhood. Sarah listened and cried and laughed and mourned all over again for everything she'd lost. When Margaret finished, Sarah spoke. Thank you. For loving her. For giving her opportunities I couldn't. For being her mother when I wasn't allowed to be. Despite everything. Despite the lies and the agency and the hidden letter, you raised an incredible woman. And I'm grateful for that even as I'm angry about everything else. Margaret reached out a trembling hand. Can you forgive me? For the letter? For keeping you in the dark? Sarah looked at that hand for a long time. Eventually, she took it. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to try. For Claire's sake. Because she deserves to have both of us in her life without it being a war. Claire watched her two mothers hold hands and felt something shift inside her. This was the moment she'd been afraid of, the confrontation, the truth. But instead of destroying what was left, it was actually starting to build something new, something honest, something that might actually last. Thomas cleared his throat. There's something else you all should know. I've been in contact with the lawyer handling the class action lawsuit. They want Claire to testify. She's what they call a positive outcome case, adopted child who wants justice for her birth mother. It could help their case significantly. Sarah looked at Claire. You don't have to do that. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Claire's voice was firm. That agency profited off your desperation and my parents' desire. They treated us like products in a transaction, and there are other families out there dealing with the same lies and trauma. If my testimony helps shut down what's left of that operation and gets justice for the mothers they exploited, then I'm testifying. It might get ugly, Thomas warned. They'll dig into your life, your relationship with us, everything. Let them dig. Claire looked at both her mothers. I'm done hiding, done with secrets, done with shame about where I came from or who I am. The truth is messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but it's still better than the lies. The lawsuit took 18 months to reach trial. 18 months during which Claire rebuilt relationships with both her mothers. 18 months of difficult conversations, therapy sessions, and slowly learning to trust again. 18 months of discovering that family isn't about blood or paperwork. It's about showing up, about choosing each other every single day. Margaret's dementia progressed exactly as the doctors predicted. Some days she was sharp and present. Other days, she forgot Claire's name. But on her good days, she talked. Told Claire stories about the desperate years of trying to conceive. The shame she felt as a woman who couldn't give her husband a child. The way that shame transformed into obsessive control when they finally got Claire. I thought if I could make you perfect, it would prove I was worthy of being your mother. Margaret said this on a particularly lucid afternoon. If you got into Harvard, if you became a concert pianist, if you married well and gave me grandchildren, then no one could say I failed. No one could say I wasn't a real mother. But you were a real mother. Claire sat beside her on the couch, holding her hand. You were there for every nightmare and every celebration. That's real. The problem was you tried so hard to prove yourself that you forgot to just be present. I wasted so much time. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. So much time trying to control you instead of knowing you. And now my mind is leaving me. And I'm terrified I'll forget you before I've truly known you. Then tell me something true. Claire squeezed her hand. Something you've never said before. Something that's just yours and mine. Margaret thought for a moment. When you were 5 years old, you wrote a song. Just a silly little thing about flowers and sunshine. You sang it to me in the car. And I realized in that moment that you had your own voice, your own creativity. And instead of nurturing it, instead of celebrating it, I redirected you to classical piano. Because classical music felt safe, acceptable. But your song was beautiful, Claire. And I stole that from you because I was afraid of where your own voice might lead you. Claire felt tears streaming down her face. Do you remember the song? Some of it. Margaret's voice was soft and she began to hum. A simple melody, sweet and childlike. Claire found herself humming along, the memory surfacing from somewhere deep. They sat there together, mother and daughter, humming a song from 23 years ago. A song that represented everything Margaret had tried to suppress and everything Claire had fought to reclaim. Sarah became a regular presence in Claire's life. They talked on the phone 3 times a week. Sarah came to Portland once a month, and they'd play music together. The guitar Sarah had kept for 28 years became Claire's most treasured possession. She started performing again, small venues, coffee shops, not chasing fame this time. Just sharing her voice because it needed to be shared. One night after a performance, Sarah approached her with tears in her eyes. You're better than I ever was. Your voice, your lyrics, the way you connect with the audience. You're everything I dreamed of becoming but never quite achieved. That's not true. Claire hugged her. You achieved something way more important. You survived. You kept going even when they took everything from you. You kept making music even when it hurt. That's the real achievement. Sarah pulled back and looked at her daughter. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Always. When they took you from me at the hospital, I wanted to die. Actually planned it. Had pills saved up. Was going to take them as soon as I got home. But then I thought about you growing up and maybe someday wanting to find me. And if you found out I'd killed myself, you'd think it was because of you. Because you weren't worth living for. So I stayed alive for you. For the possibility that someday you'd come looking. And you did. You actually did. Claire held her birth mother while she cried. All those years of pain. All those years of waiting. All those years of choosing life because a daughter she'd never known might need her someday. It was the most profound act of love Claire could imagine. The trial was intense. Claire sat in the courtroom and watched as mother after mother testified. Women who had been 18, 19, 20 when the agency found them. Pregnant and scared and poor. Women who had been offered money they desperately needed in exchange for babies they desperately wanted to keep. Women who had been lied to about their rights, about their options. About the couples who were paying triple what the mothers received. The agency's defense was predictable. They provided a service, connected children with loving families. The mothers signed contracts willingly. The adoptive parents were vetted and qualified. Everything was legal according to the laws at the time. But then Claire took the stand. The prosecutor asked her to describe her childhood. She talked about privilege and pressure, about being loved but never fully seen, about the moment she discovered she was adopted and how it recontextualized everything she'd experienced. And when you learned the truth about the adoption, about the agency's practices, how did that make you feel? Claire looked directly at the jury. It made me understand that I was never a daughter. I was a transaction. My parents paid for specifications. Mixed race, artistic mother, healthy. They custom ordered the baby they wanted. And when that baby grew up and didn't match the specifications anymore, when I chose music instead of Harvard, they discarded me like a defective product. That's what happens when you treat human beings like merchandise. When the product doesn't perform as expected, you return it. The defense attorney objected, argued that Claire's parents' personal failings weren't the agency's responsibility. But the damage was done. The jury saw it. The way the system reduced mothers to incubators and babies to products. The way money corrupted what should have been about love and family and giving children homes. Claire continued, "My birth mother wanted to keep me. She was pressured into giving me up by people who saw her desperation as an opportunity. And then for 28 years, she lived with that pain while my adoptive mother hid letters that could have given her peace. This agency enabled all of it, made profit from all of it, destroyed families and called it a service." After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found in favor of the plaintiffs, awarded damages, mandated reforms. The people who had run the agency faced criminal charges for fraud and exploitation. It wasn't enough, could never be enough. But it was something. It was justice, imperfect as justice always is. Sarah and Claire stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by other mothers and their children, some who had reunited. Some who never would because the records were destroyed or too much time had passed. They held each other and cried and celebrated and mourned all at once. A reporter approached them. "You two are the face of this case. The success story. What do you want people to understand about what happened here?" Sarah answered first. "I want people to understand that adoption can be beautiful when it's done ethically, when it's truly about finding homes for children who need them. But what this agency did wasn't adoption. It was human trafficking dressed up in legal paperwork. They found desperate women and sold their babies to wealthy couples who didn't ask enough questions," Claire added. "And I want people to understand that you can love two mothers. You can be angry at the circumstances and grateful for the outcome at the same time. Life isn't simple. Family isn't simple. My adoptive mother made terrible choices, but she still loved me. My birth mother was exploited, but she's still the strongest person I know. Both things are true, and I'm learning to hold both truths without letting either one destroy me." The reporter asked one more question. "What happens now? For both of you?" Sarah looked at Claire. "Now we keep building, keep learning each other, keep making up for lost time while we still can." Claire nodded. "And we help other people do the same. We've started a support group for adoptees who discovered late that they were adopted, for birth mothers who were coerced, for adoptive parents who are learning to navigate open adoption honestly. We're creating the resources we wish had existed for us." 6 months after the trial, Margaret passed away. The dementia had progressed to the point where she no longer recognized anyone. But in her final weeks, she had moments of clarity. In one of those moments, she asked for Sarah. Sarah came, sat beside Margaret's hospital bed. Two mothers who had loved the same daughter in such different ways. Take care of her. Margaret's words were slurred but sincere. She needs you. Always needed you. I was too selfish to see it. Sarah took Margaret's hand. I will. And thank you for raising her, for giving her opportunities, for loving her even when you didn't know how to show it. Tell her I'm sorry. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Tell her I finally understand. That she was never meant to be mine alone. That she was always meant to be shared. I'll tell her. At Margaret's funeral, Claire stood between her two families. The Pattersons on one side, stiff and formal in their grief. Sarah on the other side, holding Claire's hand. And Claire realized something profound. She didn't have to choose. Didn't have to pick one mother over the other, one identity over another, one truth over another. She could hold it all, the good and the bad, the love and the pain. The family she was born into and the family she was built into, and the family she was choosing every day. She stood at the podium and spoke. My mother taught me many things, some intentionally, some by accident. She taught me that perfection is a prison, that control is just fear wearing a fancy disguise, that sometimes the people who love us the most hurt us the deepest because they're terrified of losing us. She taught me that it's never too late to apologize, never too late to tell the truth, never too late to choose honesty over comfort. Claire looked at Sarah. But she also taught me, in her absence, in the space she left when she pushed me away, that I'm stronger than I knew, that my voice matters, that choosing myself isn't selfish, it's necessary. She taught me that sometimes the family that rejects you is actually setting you free to find the family that truly sees you. After the service, Thomas approached Claire. He looked older, more fragile. Your mother left you something. He handed her an envelope. She wrote it 6 months ago, during one of her last clear days. Made me promise to give it to you after she was gone. Claire opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Margaret's shaky handwriting. My dearest Claire, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. And I'll probably have forgotten you before the end. That terrifies me more than death itself. The idea that I might look at you and not recognize my own daughter. But I wanted to write this while I still remember. While I still know who you are and who I am, and what we've been to each other. I failed you. I know that now. I tried to make you into someone you were never meant to be. Because I was terrified of the person you actually were. You came from a woman who was brave enough to create art, even when the world told her she wasn't good enough. And instead of celebrating that heritage, I tried to bury it. When you chose music over Harvard, I saw it as rebellion. But it wasn't rebellion. It was you finally claiming your truth. And I punished you for it because your truth scared me. It reminded me that you weren't fully mine. That part of you would always belong to Sarah. I've spent these past 2 years getting to know Sarah, getting to understand the woman who gave birth to you. And I need you to know, she's wonderful. She's everything I was too proud to acknowledge. She loves you with a fierceness I never quite managed. And I'm grateful that you have her. Grateful that you don't have to choose between us anymore. I'm leaving you my piano, not because I want you to play classical music, but because I want you to play whatever music is in your heart. And I'm leaving you my journals. Years of entries I never let anyone read. I want you to know me. Not the perfect version I showed the world, but the real me. The scared, insecure, controlling woman who loved you so much, she nearly destroyed you. Learn from my mistakes, Claire. Don't let fear make you cruel. Don't let pride keep you from truth. And don't ever, ever let anyone tell you that you have to be anything other than exactly who you are. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry. Mom. Claire read the letter 3 times, cried through all 3 readings. Then she folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Sarah came up behind her and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked. Claire leaned into the embrace. "Yeah, I think I am. For the first time in my life, I actually am." 2 years later, Claire released her first album. It was dedicated to both her mothers, the woman who gave her life and the woman who gave her a life. The launch party was at the Bitter End in Seattle, the same place where she'd first met Sarah. The room was packed, friends, family, strangers who had heard about her story. Claire took the stage with the guitar Sarah had kept for 28 years. She looked out at the audience and saw Sarah in the front row, tears already streaming down her face. She saw Thomas looking proud in a way he'd never quite managed when she was younger. She saw the support group members, the other adoptees, the other mothers, all the people who understood that family is complicated and beautiful and painful and worth fighting for. This first song is called Two Mothers. Claire's voice was steady. It's about learning that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. That you can honor where you came from and where you ended up without choosing sides. It's about the journey from rejection to redemption, from secrets to truth, from broken to whole. She played, and as the music filled the room, Claire felt something she'd been searching for her entire life. Peace, not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. The understanding that her story, with all its complications and contradictions, was exactly what it needed to be. She'd been the rebellious daughter who was rejected by her parents. But that rejection had led her to Sarah, had led her to truth, had led her to herself. And when she'd returned 10 years later, what shocked everyone wasn't just the reunion. It was the revelation that sometimes the people who push you away are actually pushing you toward the life you were always meant to live. Claire finished her song. The audience erupted in applause. Sarah was sobbing openly. Thomas was wiping his eyes. And Claire stood on that stage, holding her mother's guitar, wearing her mother's ring, carrying both their legacies, and felt complete. Because she'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that you don't have to choose between the truth and the lie, between the past and the present, between one mother and another. You just have to be brave enough to hold it all. To say, yes, this happened, and that happened, and all of it made me who I am. And who I am is enough. The rebellious daughter had come home, not to the house on Maple Street, not to the perfect life her parents had planned, but to herself, to her truth, to the complicated, messy, beautiful reality of being fully human. And that was the greatest rebellion of all. What about you? Have you ever discovered that the people who rejected you were actually setting you free? Have you ever learned that the family you thought was perfect was hiding secrets that explained everything? Drop a comment below and share your story. Because the truth is, we're all carrying complicated histories. We're all trying to make peace with the families that shaped us. And sometimes, just knowing we're not alone in that struggle is enough to keep going. Keep healing. Keep becoming who we were always meant to be.